Hi, my name is Kaylee Root, and I had the opportunity to attend the 2013 MACUL conference at Detroit's Cobo Center from March 20th to the 22nd, and I just wanted to provide you with a little reflection of what that experience was like and also share some of the things that I learned. The opening keynote was with Kevin Honeycutt, and it was titled Launch Me. We discussed how do you develop the capacity to really connect with audiences. It's important to remember that even with all of the tools that we have available, relationships are still the most important things between educators and students. How kids feel when they're learning. Do they feel safe? Do they feel proud, open, timid? That's just as important as anything that they're actually learning. So the key takeaway here is that it's critical for us as educators to explore ways of presenting and connecting deeply with the kids who listen to us talk. And perhaps it's not a bad idea to allow them to lead their own learning and to trust that they know how to do that. I'll get further into this when I discuss a couple sessions that I attended on flipped classrooms. So from there and throughout the rest of the conference, I attended 9 other sessions that could fairly be categorized into these 4 areas of technology, professional development, flipped learning, and most of the emphasis in the sessions that I attended were on flipped classrooms, iPads, and technology in schools. So what is our current culture, what is some recent research, and basically just what our current state is. In this next session, Erica Dean of Detroit Public Schools discusses that while many times in our schools there are many teachers that will readily embrace the technology that's available to them, while other times there are teachers who are just not ready for those tools yet. And what this session aims to do is help tech leaders lead those teachers toward using the tools that are available to them and available to their students. The key takeaway in this session is that support from building and district administrators plays a huge role in successful technology integration. That's the same key takeaway in transforming K-12 classrooms with Robert Lenaway of Western Michigan University. In that session, it was backed by a national research study done by Project Red. When examining the biggest factors in determining success of technology integration, they found it to be the second strongest factor, second only to an implementation factor. Did they have an implementation plan, and was it executed correctly? So this is all good information for tech staff to take back to schools. This next session describes one school's very unique way of approaching technology professional development. They held a 3-day summer boot camp that was designed for new staff, totally optional. They also opened it up to current staff, and they had great success with it. Am I interested in doing this? Absolutely. I think it's a unique way of approaching professional development. I guess it's something that I'll definitely try. So moving on to Flip Learning, I attended Redesigning Schools with Flip Learning with Brian Bennett. And my understanding of flipped learning is taking direct instruction, doing a physical and philosophical redesign of schools, starting with the physical and taking the direct instruction that happens in the classroom, which is a community space. So taking that direct instruction from the community space where you would normally have interaction and creation and building to the personal space. So whether that be at home or during their lunch or on the school bus on the way to soccer, that whenever it is best for them to learn is now where their direct instruction will occur. And then they will come back to the community space and learn with their peers, and they will lead their own learning and discovery. They will research, they will work on projects, and teachers will trust them to do that, and that's kind of what we touched on in Launch Me. This transition from the discipline model of school to this empowering model where students are now developing lifelong skills and becoming lifelong learners. So the key takeaway here, though, was that not only do we have to reconsider the physical design of this, but also the philosophical redesign of the time spent in schools, because this is such a severe transition, or just a big change for the way that things have been for many, many years. It's going to take some mental shift. And Brian was a teacher for, I'm not sure how long, but he went through this mental shift himself. So he's a teacher and I'm not, and I'm going to let him describe that for you.
So flexible spaces, they require a mental shift from the teacher. And this is what I discovered very early on. And this is a really hard lesson for me to learn. What started to happen is when I regrouped my rooms, I would be walking around. And because I'm not up front teaching anymore, my kids are working on all sorts of different things, which is great. Some kids are on videos in class time. Okay, that's not a bad thing. Some kids are doing a lab. Some kids are working on a project. Some kids are just doing book work if they're practicing. Some kids are taking a quiz. And then there was the group that was doing Spanish. Okay? And I teach chemistry. What's your first reaction when you walk up? And there's like 6 kids working on Spanish in my chemistry class. And I can see your face. It's like your gut's like, ooh. This is my time. This is when you should be doing chemistry. But what I really, as I started to think about it and I started to reapproach it, if my content is available, okay, anywhere, anytime, do they have to work on my content in my classroom from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock every day? Is it such a bad thing that they don't? Schools are places of learning. Okay. Now, the reason I want them to work on chemistry from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock is because that's my time. That's when I get to see them, but I'm not the focus anymore. All right. We shouldn't be the focus of our classrooms. Our students working together should be the focus of your classroom, whatever that looks like for you. And that changes from across the board. So as this kind of developed, as this flexible space began to develop, I started to be okay with the idea that this group of girls, they might do chemistry in my classroom a few days a week. Especially if there's a lab, obviously, if there's a project that they needed to work on together. But if they're done with chemistry and they can prove they know how to do it, I don't care if they work on Spanish, because that might be an hour earlier that they get to go to bed at night. And it might be an hour earlier that they get to go home after school instead of coming to me for tutoring.
I also attended Brian's session, Elements of Flip Learning, Do's and Don'ts, where he helps sort out expectations of flip learning in response to some successes and setbacks that he and other teachers have had with flipped implementation. For example, don't expect all of your other staff members to fully agree with the concept and support of workflow. Oftentimes, grading points can be out of sync with flip class progression. You might also want to give a heads up to visitors what your classroom may look like, so that when they walk in and students are working all over, that they don't think you have control of your classroom. So there's a great list out there of do's and don'ts, and I fully encourage researching flip classrooms before implementing, so that it's more successful. It sounds like it can be incredibly challenging, but of course it sounds so rewarding for the students. So it's important to go into this project with an optimistic yet realistic outlook to avoid any major discouragements. Moving on to iPads, I'll definitely try and keep this a little shorter so that we can get through this in a decent amount of time. Emerging instructional trends with effective use of iPads in the classroom. My key takeaway here is definitely the SAMR model. The SAMR model is a tool to measure the application of technology. It's an acronym that stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So you can use it with any technology tool, but I think it is especially useful in the use of iPads in the classroom and in deciding what apps you're going to place on your iPad. You basically compare an app up with this model and find out where it fits on that scale. Is this a substitution app? Are we taking notes with it? Can we take notes without this app? Or is it redefining our instruction in this classroom? Are our students making movies on iMovie? Are they publishing content with iBook Author? It would really help you choose the most effective tool for this. The SIGTech workshop on Wednesday morning was an overview of several mobile device management options for schools. It began with an overview of Apple's mobile device management framework and covered factors in different ownership models that are used in different schools. So how are your devices used? These are factors that are important because they help determine your needs when it comes to deciding on a mobile device management system. The key takeaway was the demo at the end of this session, and it was on 3 paid mobile device management solutions, Jamf, Absolute, and AirWatch, and that gives us just what we're looking for, a nice comprehensive breakdown of what each solution does and doesn't do so that we can be well informed when we decide on our solution. The closing keynote was with Steve Dembo. It was titled Building Better Schools, and in this closing keynote, he asked, why are schools so terrified of being the first to move forward? Sometimes there is this false sense of perceived risk, and it outweighs the potential for greatness, unfortunately. He touched on the F word of Facebook in schools, and instead of feeling so out of control when that thought even comes to mind, that it's too reckless or dangerous for us to be one of the first proponents of that, why do we focus our energies on that rather than focusing on being the school that's known for giving the highest quality education in digital citizenship and for having students that respect best practices? We want to engage our students. That's always our goal. And I have to agree with Steve that be it for or against its use in education, our students are deeply immersed in this social network. So discussing the risk, benefits, and transformations that can occur when a school embraces the risk and is willing to step up and be first was the key takeaway. And that pretty much sums up this conference. Thank you so much for listening. We also did the Harlem Shake in our closing keynote. So I will play that for you, and thank you again for listening. Goodbye. Con los terroristas.
And do the Harlem Shake.